everybody. Sorry about that short delay. Thank you so much for joining us again for our next session that is sponsored by ACL. It's titled How to Provide a 360-degree view of the biggest IT risks and vulnerabilities. Today, I'm very excited to be introducing you to our speaker. Phil Shamora is a Senior Product Manager at ACL. Phil is a seasoned product expert with a passion for bridging customers' needs with technology solutions. At ACL, Phil leads the execution of go-to-market strategies for ACL's cloud-based, data-driven governance platform. Some of his responsibilities include performing marketing analysis on how ACL addresses the evolving needs of governance, risk, and compliance professionals. Okay, Phil, I'm going to let you take it away.
Thank you, Lucy. Good day, everyone, and thank you for joining me for this session. As you've probably read in the invitation to this event, our topic today is about achieving a 360-degree view of the biggest IT risks and vulnerabilities. I think we can all reason that it takes more than just identifying risks and retroactively reviewing our progress for hits and misses, maybe 6 or 12 months down the line after the fact. It's not a sustainable risk management strategy, and it's certainly not conducive to creating a culture of proactive mitigation and near real-time remediation. Many people I speak to are still using manual processes to address risk, but even where a tool is used, I hear that many are either antiquated or highly complex solutions, which really doesn't make the challenge of proactive risk management any easier. And this is particularly true when it comes to the dynamic and ever-changing regulatory and compliance landscape of IT. Take, for example, data privacy with GDPR, the California privacy law coming up. It's getting more complicated, and we need tools to make things easier. So instead, imagine a scenario where your department is always standing ready and confident to demonstrate coverage for standards and requirements that increase your assurance across different risk factors, both in your IT department and across the organization as a whole. All this while being able to, on demand, provide evidence to support independent audit and review. So how am I to achieve this? Well, I'm hoping to shed some light on that today in our session. And additionally, as an IT GRC vendor at ACL, I'll also demonstrate how to leverage an IT GRC platform powered by robotic process automation to establish and continually maintain a strong governance posture over your risk and compliance program. So let's begin. So I really like this image. I did not Photoshop it. It's a pretty cool image, though. Risks here exist at many levels and may take different forms depending on your industry, geography, and market landscape. But at the end of the day, no organization exists without facing their fair share of risks. So identifying and contextualizing them for your business is critical. Unless you ignore them and let them lie waiting, so to speak, like a wolf in sheep's clothing, as you can see in this image. Of course, this can result in grave consequences, including penalties and damage to your brand, which nobody wants. Your specific industry brings clarity and focus, allowing you to contextually identify your greatest concerns, crystallizing them as your true risks. These are just some examples of risks organizations rank at the top of their list as surveyed by a recent report. So I'll ask you, what keeps you up at night? What do you need to keep a pulse on to remain in compliance? And most importantly, which risks most directly impact your strategic objectives? I would hazard a guess that we have guests in the audience today from many different verticals, industries, geographies, and positions of risk and governance, including audit and compliance. And I'm also guessing that you're probably feeling under-resourced, over-regulated, drowning in pages of regulatory requirements, and ultimately pulled in countless directions to maintain oversight of your risk and compliance programs. If we look at this table for just a moment, this table serves to illustrate that even within IT, just IT, the matrix of regulatory obligations varies widely depending on many factors, and with it, considerable risk of non-compliance. Here I've only listed industries, But if you consider things like geography, the nature of the business's IT infrastructure, for example, SaaS, it only adds further complexity. So risk factors multiply as you add more variables. So I have to ask, is there a better method than SharePoint and Excel to monitor this, which is what I hear as the de facto solution for, when there is a lack of technology involved or a lack of software involved. So I would argue that there certainly is a better method. So how do we start? Let's begin with 4 simple steps to not only improving but simplifying your assurance efforts. We'll go through these briefly. First step is to identify and verify risks. That means determine high-risk processes and areas by performing a data-driven entity-wide assessment and developing an implementation plan to carry that through. The second step is to document key processes and controls. So evaluate process and control documentation, perform walkthroughs to create or update process narratives and flowcharts, documenting processes along the way. Identifying key controls and determining key controls and matching those to identified risks in high-risk process areas. The third step is to assess internal controls. So basically assessing business processes by performing a test of designs, as well as a test of the effectiveness of internal controls themselves, and then validating results through risk-based sampling. The final step, step 4, is to document results, report findings to your stakeholders, and remediate exceptions. So good in theory, but how do we apply this? First thing I should mention is, despite the fact that I've presented this as 4 independent steps, the reality is that they operate in a closed-loop fashion in support of a true continuous improvement model. So let's keep that in mind. So with those 4 steps in mind, you can either perform those using manual or automated techniques, of which the latter leverages best-in-class technology. Given a choice between the two, I'm pretty certain everyone would prefer the second choice. And why is that? Well, it's because the days of backwards-looking checklists and risk assessments frozen in spreadsheets should really be a thing of the past. While risk management is notoriously subjective, an IT GRC platform provides a more objective way of understanding and acting on risk. ACL's risk management software brings objective data-powered risk management to life and provides a single pane of glass view of your risks and opportunities. We help automate your risk management framework to accelerate achievement of your strategic agenda. We simplify the process with a highly visual tool. So first, we take a data-driven approach to assess and manage risk, and then we revolutionize the exercise of mapping and tracking regulatory changes to minimize daily operational burden. This combination provides your board and executive teams with a simple, holistic view of your global risk management and compliance posture. So let me illustrate with a simple whiteboarding exercise to lead you through a typical IT GRC workflow. We start by identifying strategic or enterprise risks. These are risks that impact the entire organization, not just individual departments. These might include financial loss, including penalties, fines, or lawsuits, loss of competitive advantage, so intellectual property or financial pricing information, business interruption or business disruption, including reputational damage or perhaps a ransomware cyber attack, or finally, loss of revenue due to a lack of competitiveness or customer attrition. Next, we identify operational objectives that help the organization achieve their strategic goals. So what kind of risks threaten these objectives from being achieved? Well, these might include things like unauthorized access to confidential information, non-compliance with critical regulations and standards, or a lack of cybersecurity plan, combined with a lack of awareness and training across cybersecurity or good cybersecurity hygiene. If these are true, then some important initiatives might include identifying standards and regulations against which compliance would help mitigate these operational risks. These might include very common standards and regulations you might already be familiar with: COBIT, ISO 27001, 27002, CSA, NIST, SANS Top 20, PCI, the list goes on. So with operational risks and mitigating activities identified, you can create projects that help break down the implementation plan of these initiatives. These might include an IT audit readiness plan, data privacy compliance plan, or cybersecurity compliance plan. Projects such as these will involve testing of controls designed to mitigate potential threats or unfavorable outcomes. Before jumping to the testing of the controls, it's important to identify systems of record or data sources from which to collect data for analysis to quantify the effectiveness of key controls. These might include your ERP system, cybersecurity point solutions, log files from your SIM solution, privileged access management tools, your Active Directory logs, user lists and log files, your human resources system, or even your vendor list. Then control testing may not always be as simple as directly sourcing data from systems. It may sometimes involve using electronic tools to source human insights or attestations from control owners. With the right GRC platform, though, you should be able to centralize the ingestion and collection of data regardless of its source. These might include testing your physical access controls, testing your logical access controls, ingesting data feeds from your cybersecurity tools, taking a look at your ERP systems and investigating the breakdown of segregation of duties, or perhaps using surveys and questionnaires going right to the employees or people to look at how well they're complying with policies and procedures around IT security. And finally, where anomalies, exceptions, or threats are identified, an action or series of activities can be triggered by the GRC tool to notify the right people or kick off a workflow to remediate the issue. These might even include triggering the creation of a help desk ticket to kickstart remediation steps. And with this entire diagram, I'd like to focus on the last two steps for a moment and dive a bit deeper to illustrate just how ACL integrates robotic process automation to deliver a data-driven approach to dynamically inform your assessment of risks or controls. So, excuse me, I'll take a drink of water. Excuse me. So the key to implementing a data-driven approach is to perform deep inspection and analysis of your data in an automated and continuous manner. But how do you actually go about accomplishing this? After all, oftentimes the sheer amount of data is overwhelming and virtually impossible to manage, no matter or generic business intelligence. At ACL, these are the core tenets for sustainable automated control monitoring. The first tenet is acquire, which means accessing any data from anywhere, anytime, and automating data extraction and harmonization. This ensures that you can preserve data quality and integrity and gives you the ability to centralize the data for things like collaboration, repeatability, efficiency, sustainability, and security. So what does this look like in application? Well, as a first step, the first step is to collect, compile, standardize, harmonize, and compare data from disparate systems and separate instances. By identifying specific fields within each system you want to query and aggregating this data, you can contextually analyze entire data populations to identify anomalies, exceptions, and threats. Now, data access and blending is about 80% of the job, but it becomes incredibly challenging and expensive when many tools are involved. What's the other 20%? Well, that's knowing what questions to ask your data in the context of your risk and control domain. You don't know what to ask your data, you can extract insights you need. ACL technology has been solving these challenges for more than 30 years and is built to provide assurance and performance insight over process, risk, control, and compliance areas. The second tenet is test, which allows you to achieve a full population coverage for your testing. It allows you to automate your tests and find issues early and often and objectively quantify your findings. So again, an application, the second step, with the data sources identified, data can be extracted for analysis across the entire data population, not just a sample. Recurring analysis can be easily automated to free up time and ensure analysis is consistently performed every time. The analysis can be configured to suit the cadence, whether hourly, daily, weekly, quarterly, that your organization is most comfortable with. And this removes the burden of needing to remember to execute this on an ad hoc manual basis, which can result in a backwards-looking point of view of your threats, which is kind of counterintuitive to the whole process. The third tenet is report, which helps to illuminate risks and opportunities, enables agile decision-making, allows you to achieve strategic objectives, and this is best achieved through easily accessible and actionable visualizations and dashboards. So in application, the third step, as a result of the analysis, threats are identified. Now, our technology allows inspection of data flows and the ability to distribute that intelligently to individuals for further investigation using tools like surveys and questionnaires. For example, you can reduce false positives by automatically combining human insight with raw data. An example of that is setting it up so that you can automatically trigger a questionnaire to be sent out to someone when a certain criteria in a response to a survey or a questionnaire is met. It's sort of like a threshold of what you would not want the response to be in a questionnaire or survey, and that could trigger an action to send out additional investigative questions to that particular person or department. The fourth tenet is action, meaning being able to engage stakeholders, including delegation and remediation, and taking action on your findings to remediate. So this final step, once threats are identified and verified, you can alert stakeholders, whether those are control owners or compliance officers, for investigation, incident management, and remediation. With the system able to automatically alert pre-designated persons about issues or threats, send reminders if not looked at within a specific amount of time, or escalate for urgent remediation, there's really no need to manually assign issues to stakeholders within the organization, which is a big time saver and it reduces a lot of email traffic as well. There's also no need to worry about human error, holidays, and urgent projects getting in the way of assigning issues. There's also no need to physically chase down individuals to ensure the issue was taken care of. Where material threats are uncovered, ACL's automated technology can trigger remediation workflows to ensure the right people are notified, and all within the context of preset priority statuses and escalation paths. So with the IT GRC workflow, the IT GRC platform workflow and the data-driven robotic process automation covered, let's see what this actually looks like in the product. So now, within the ACL platform, when you're deciding on what risks to identify and mitigate, you can either start by clicking on the box on the top right-hand corner, Risk Library, and pull from a library of risks that we've curated for you to get started a little bit easier, or you can add your own custom risks. Whichever method you choose, ensure you identify the risks that impact your strategic objectives. Next, you can categorize them by risk response. You can drag and drop risks across different risk response categories, and you can even customize the categories to match vernacular or the types of actions you would take in your particular organization. But for the examples listed here in the risk response, they're defined as follows. So assess, planning is underway to assess the estimated cost and effort to reduce the likelihood or impact of the risk. Deferred means temporary holding pattern for emerging risks or placement in a parking lot to be addressed at a later time. Monitoring means action is being taken to stop the operational process or the part of the operational process causing the risk. And accepted means no action is to be taken to respond to the risk based on either the insignificance of the risk or because the cost of mitigation outweighs the impact of the risk actually occurring. Of these operational risks, you can then dive deeper into one of them to manage them. And by selecting the Manage button, you can perform a number of activities, including assessment of risks, treatment of risks, and measuring the effectiveness of mitigating treatment initiatives. These metrics you see here are driven by data analytics of data from tapping into different business processes, business systems, IT systems, etc. We'll get into that in a little bit later, but just keep this image in mind for now. Now, our system allows you to assess risk in 3 different ways. 2 of them are qualitative, and 1 of them is quantitative. Of the qualitative ways, that includes personal judgment, so one person that is intimately familiar with the business and the risks that matter most can begin using drop-down menus to assess the risk based on likelihood, impact, and so forth. We also offer a workshop type of feature, which allows for more of a crowdsourcing or a group voting system where different people from departments across the organization that can weigh in and vote in certain risks and decide how to assess them. The third way is quantitative, and that's using data analytics, which taps into different systems of record or data sources to objectively assess scores using metrics like the one we saw in this slide here. Wherever possible, however, it's a good idea to use data to inform your risk because it is both objective and dynamically driven in real time. So if I were to go back here and you take a look at the little purple button along this list here, it says Automate. When you click on that Automate button, it brings up a screen that allows you to calculate your metrics and set a threshold. So leveraging data analytics to calculate metrics can help automatically assess risks by scoring them against predetermined thresholds. And these thresholds can be determined by metrics as an objective average. So if you don't know the status of certain issues, you can run some data analytics to get a good idea, to get a good average of where you fall and decide whether that number is too high or too low and set that threshold so that it doesn't surpass that. Alternatively, if you already have a good idea of your risk appetite or comfort level of where you do not want the metric to exceed, you can simply set that number as a default and say that that is your threshold that you do not want to exceed. Now, once the threshold is exceeded, your risk score will automatically, dynamically change to reflect what is going on in real time. And that's super important because you're not having to effectively go in there and change the risk score manually, but it is actually taking a look at your data and changing it dynamically to inform you that it's either dropped or risen, and it would be compared to that threshold at all times to determine whether it's at a comfort level or if it's at a risky threshold. Should you have controls, procedures, or policies in place already that you feel immediately eliminate a degree of risk, you can apply treatments to your risk scoring. For example, if your existing controls are estimated to eliminate 90% of your risk when, well, assuming that they're 100% effective, that should leave you with a residual risk of 10%. Now, you have to put that theory to test by automating the testing of those controls to see if they are indeed 100% effective. After testing all your controls, let's say they are proven to be only 90% effective. Then your residual risk increases proportionally, giving you an actual residual risk of 19 to 20%. And that's what you see on this screen. It provides a summary of risk performance in the context of your assurance plans by detailing the effectiveness of treatment initiatives. Although it's somewhat disappointing that your residual risk increased, it's still highly effective and informative to know that your risk score, what your risk score in fact is, so you can take appropriate action to decrease the residual score further with either more or by improving your controls. To do so, you can dive deeper into one of these treatment areas and manage it at the risk and control or risk and procedural level. So let's choose from this list, we'll choose system access management process. And here, this is where you can enter your narratives and descriptions in for this particular process. You can map individual risks to associated mitigating controls. And this can be accomplished with a one-to-one or one-to-many relationship model, whichever makes most sense to your organization from a coverage standpoint. And with ACL, we integrate control frameworks as well as regulations in there so that you already have that content in there so that you can begin performing that mapping exercise to demonstrate coverage right out of the gate. And through control testing initiatives, whether performed manually or through robotic process automation, which I covered earlier in this presentation, you can easily identify the effectiveness of your controls or lack thereof for immediate remediation. You can also review the results of your risk and control initiatives for this particular process in an easy-to-understand dashboard view. And finally, you can centrally manage any outstanding issues that require remediation efforts for this particular process. And if we jump back out for a moment, zooming back out to the strategic level view and away from the weeds for a moment, now with treatment and mitigating initiatives covering all your risks, you can achieve a governing view of all your risks in the form of a risk heat map. And you'll see here, cybersecurity ranks around 19 in this particular environment. But you can see the size and the colors of each of the risks as indicative of where they fall in priority level. Finally, ACL's data-driven approach feeds our visualizations in real time. But more importantly, these visualizations tell a rich story about your risk and compliance projects. What's more, you can take these individual visualizations and create a collage, which we call storyboards, to reveal a holistic picture where the sum of all the visualizations tell a greater story. Complete with narratives and descriptions, it really brings the visualization to life with the ability to see it all in concert to kind of paint a bigger picture. With this story, you're more able to effectively communicate your findings to the board, executives, and other stakeholders who consume the final data in a much more distilled format than what you may be accustomed to. Storyboards can be easily customized to include or omit information as required to suit unique audience groups. Even we at ACL leverage storyboards to communicate with our board and other stakeholders, be it IT security, performance management, financial results, talent management, even NPS scores. It's an incredibly powerful tool. So in conclusion, what are the benefits of adopting an IT GRC platform to achieve a 360-degree view of your risks and vulnerabilities around IT? Well, first, it helps you to report risk as it relates to strategy and performance objectives. It allows you to access and blend data from various siloed systems for a unified analysis and reporting. It allows you to automate control and risk assessment. It allows you to gain a unified view of IT risk and compliance activities. It gives you more contextual insights than manual methods. Ensures audit and regulatory readiness, and helps you align with organizational strategies. So that's all I have for today. I see there's a bunch of questions. You'll have to give me a moment as I kind of filter through these and try to answer these one by one. But first of all, I want to thank you for your attention and thank you for sticking around for the full presentation. I'll go through these questions one by one. So the first question is, could I use it with automated business controls? I'm wondering if I'm understanding what you mean by automated business controls. Yes. So any type of controls that you have in place, as long as you can source the data from the systems where that data lies, you can analyze that data and ask the right questions using scripts to understand whether those controls are actually effective or not. And so I hope that answers the question. If it doesn't, please, Oscar, if you want to elaborate a little bit more with a follow-up question, I'd be happy to answer that. Could we have some documentation about the tool, please? There's plenty of information on the ACL website. There's also my email that I'm sure Lucy can pass to you if you require some more detailed information. I'd be happy to engage with you directly, so no problem with that. What GRC application is recommended? Well, I would obviously recommend ACL, but if you've had a chance to take a look at the Gartner Integrated Risk Management report, I would recommend you take a look at that, so you can take a look at all the vendors and where we all are positioned with respect to Gartner's analysis. That should give you a good idea of which vendors are prominently playing in the GRC space and specifically in the IT space. What's the footprint of the ACL GRC tool software? Is it all cloud-based? Indeed it is. We are a SaaS cloud-based solution, and so the footprint, if anything, is incredibly small. We do have our analytics tool and engine, which is a small, very, very small footprint engine that runs the analytics, but by and large, everything is in the cloud. So, and we are SOC 2 compliant, so, and we adopt a highly secure type of model to implementing our solution. So, yeah, the footprint is incredibly small, but we're a very secure cloud-based solution. Would this tool be suitable for a small, medium business, or is it overkill? At what point does it become economically viable? Well, interestingly enough, we have customers of all different sizes. We have customers that use but 5 licenses to manage their governance, risk, and compliance function, and we go all the way up to customers that have hundreds, 200, 300 licenses. So really the solution is what you make of it. The value that you glean from it, would be the same. It's just we just basically build it and bundle it and price it in a way that kind of suits the team, the size of the team, and the use cases that you need it for. So I would encourage you that just because you're a small, medium business, to not veer away from that and default to manual tools, but to still investigate a software tool like this, because it will bring incredible efficiencies, especially if your team is very small, to be able to automate things, because you only have so many resources to throw at your GRC function. We are currently using ACL GRC, but not sure how to use the strategy module and import a control matrix. I can certainly help with that. I would also advise you to speak to your customer success account rep. I'm sure they'd be very happy to lead you through it. I think it really is quite simple, and perhaps you were not privy to the onboarding at first, but I'm sure that if our customer success team were to walk you through it, you'd have a much easier time using it. So, but again, Lucy has my email. If he passes that to you, I'd be happy to assist you with that as well. Is ACL Analytics a free tool? It is not a free tool. It is a core component of our data-driven GRC platform. It does come at a price. We have different bundles depending on whether you're cloud averse or whether you have a lot of systems in the cloud that you'd like to tap into to perform analytics across. So different pricing structures across the board that will prove very flexible to you. So, but it is a tool that you have to pay for. Oh, sorry, this screen's professionally constantly. How do you maintain your GRC system in tune with constantly changing regulations? How is this channeled to your subscriber clients? So we have integrated content that covers, we have a library of suites that cover different verticals, including banking, government, IT, data privacy, and we have an entire team of developers and a content research team that is dedicated to seeking out new regulations and control frameworks that we can bring into the system. We import them in and make them libraries in our ACL content suite that you can use right off the bat. And where there are updates, for example, PCI just updated from 3.2 to 3.2.1, NIST just upgraded from NIST 1.0 to 1.1. Our team goes out and ensures that the most recent regulations standards, compliance laws are updated and imported into our system in an evergreen model. So as a customer, when you pay for these content suites, you're guaranteed an evergreen type of model where we will take it upon us to update the regulations so that the most recent regulations are always available in our system for use. How does ACL data extraction compare to SIM tools, as data extraction instances is rather complicated? Well, the data connectors we actually have data connectors to many systems, and we make it so that the connection to those systems, whether it's SAP, Jira, Marketo, you name it, we can extract the data in a way where we automate the extraction once it's set up with the data connector, so that automated extraction happens at a scheduled, repeatable process. And so it's not that every time you want to connect to the system, it needs to be built from scratch. We sell data connectors so that the data connection piece to those systems of records is by far the easiest step in the process. And extracting that data is so important for our data-driven model that we've really invested a lot into making that a pretty seamless process. We just need to know which system you need to connect to. If we've not connected to it in the past, it could be as simple as an ODBC connection, extracting information through using whether it be XML, JSON, or building an API. But we've yet to find a system that we've not been able to connect to. So we either have the data connectors available already, or we have a team of people that can ensure that that data connection is successful, so you can start drawing the important information that you're looking to analyze pretty quickly. You mentioned updating standards and regulations, but how does that integrate? For most, NIST standards are guidelines, therefore not required, and non-compliance to NIST is not a risk. I would argue that I think it depends on the organization. I feel that not complying or implementing standards, whether it's NIST or SANS Top 20, can propose a great risk to an organization from a cybersecurity standpoint. But in terms of how this integrates, the NIST framework, we've built the framework into our system so that you can assign controls, map controls that are within your organization to the NIST framework to demonstrate how you're covered from a cybersecurity point of view. And that's how we integrate the NIST framework into things that we call control frameworks and compliance maps in our solution. And you can automate the assessment of those controls on a continuous basis to ensure that you are in quote-unquote compliance with NIST at any given time. Is there a version of your product that is aimed at higher education? For sure, yes. The tool itself operates the same way, but the context of how you use it is really dependent on the risks that you build in there, the content suites that you adopt that we've already integrated for higher education. And so for sure, yes, you can use that for anything from government to education, higher education, banking, IT. The GRC tool remains the same, but how you point that cannon, if you will, to address a certain use case or certain vertical will be dependent on how you build out your risks and what content you use to contextualize it. So. Can we subscribe to ACL on a month-to-month basis? Unfortunately, you can. It's on an annual subscription. So you sign up for an annual subscription. We do not tie you into a 3 to 5 year agreement, just to give you that flexibility as well. For having a 360 view, should an organization first overcome resistance and silo mentality? Absolutely. I think that is a very important thing to tackle. That's more of a culture, and that it's important to. I think that's where something like the risk workshop really helps. Is it brings people from different organizations together. Sorry, not organizations. It brings people from different departments together to really collaboratively identify risks and rank them and understand what mitigating efforts are key and effective in managing those risks. And what we found with our customers is that they really enjoy the workshops because it's not one person that's calling all the shots and making all the decisions when ranking and assessing risks, but it's really a team-based view so that everybody gets that opportunity to weigh in and be part of the conversation, and build on a mitigation plan. How much does input from your customers determine the next version of the software features? Heavily, in fact. Our product development team and our product management team, of which I'm a part of, we meet regularly with customers. We have use group events. We have a large annual event where we connect with our customers, and we have individual calls with key customers all the time to understand what's working, what's not, and based on those requests, we put that onto the roadmap and try to prioritize what to build in the most expeditious fashion that we can. I apologize. There's a dog in the office, so you might be hearing that bark. How many risks maps should an organization have? Well, I think that really is dependent on the organization. As you can see, a risk map you can build a risk map for operational risks, which will inevitably result in multiple risk maps. You can have one for ops, you can have one for finance, you can have one for IT. But from a strategic level, I would recommend one heat map, but if you get down to the department or operational level, you might require multiple maps just so that it remains in the context of what you're considering as you compare risks against each other. Okay, I think that's about it. Lucy, would you mind taking over now?
Hi. Sorry, I disconnected for a minute. Okay, everyone, we're going to take just a quick 5-minute break. Thank you so much, Phil, for that very educational presentation and very interesting Q&A session. Thank you to ACL. Your sponsorship has made it possible for ISACA to offer this event free of charge for everyone.